Welcome back, everybody, for another episode of the Big O Podcast. Today, I am joined by two members of the Toronto Blue Jays International Scouting Department, Mr. Julio Ramirez and Tyler Baldwin. Gentlemen, how are you doing today?
Exceptional. Wonderful. How's everyone doing?
We're great, man. Thanks for having me on. I'm glad to know we got some internet issues figured out on my end too.
Yeah, the last time we tried to connect for a podcast, Tyler was in the heart of Donald Trump country in Florida, and the internet bandwidth was just unacceptable. Trump was trying to take over with all of these crazy accusations of voting fraud and all sorts of business, but we got this squared away. And now we're back connecting, and it's an interesting time because so much has changed since we last talked. Number one, the new president-elect, whether he wants to admit it or not, Mr. Joe Biden, and Tampa Bay has actually inherited the Toronto Raptors. They will be known as the Tampa Bay Raptors. That's not true at all. I just figured that might be kind of cool. What is it like, Ty, there in Florida and Tampa, with the acquisition of the 2019 NBA champion Toronto Raptors?
Well, it's interesting, and just to backtrack a little bit and play nonpartisan, it was Biden rally, Trump rally, and I was also in the middle of it had to have been tropical storm.
Oh, right. That's right.
So not to disparage the internet of the homeowner that I was at the time, it was just quite the mix of ingredients to get poor bandwidth. However, moving forward now onto Toronto Raptors, it's funny because I actually grew up like a big Vince Carter guy, and that transitioned into my Raptors fanhood. And Julio is kind of my mentor in Raptors fanhood right now, so I really go to him for any sort of update or actualization and what's going on. But it's going to be interesting to see because, one, we obviously have state restrictions being completely limited due to or not limited, but taken down from the state level. However, owners are within their right to operate under whatever capacity they want. Now, that said, Amalie Arena is where the Tampa Bay Lightning play, and you can't get a seat there. I'm talking the third urinal from the bar across the street is still occupied at the time of the game. So it's going to be fun to see just a new sort of flavor. And there's a lot of, sport and sport love and excitement just around that area in general. So I think they will do well. And obviously it's a winning franchise. So it'll be fun to see.
Now that's interesting because not the only new acquisition to Tampa Bay. I read a news report that actually said WWE is moving into Tropicana Field for the foreseeable future to have events, moving out of their Orlando complex, I guess. So again, Florida, they put out the notice at the beginning of COVID where it's like, we'll have every organization under the sun come and play in Florida. Obviously, MLS had their MLS tournament to kick off their season. The NBA had their bubble, and they were trying to get everybody. And now, listen, they have the Toronto Raptors. They have the WWE. It's interesting. It's interesting. And hopefully, I'm a Patriots guy, but I'm a Brady guy. Tampa Bay might be able to secure a very interesting three champions, like a city of champions, and establish this level of winning that is synonymous with a major city. And it's interesting because Tampa Bay kind of under the radar when it comes to that kind of stuff. So it'll be interesting to see what Tampa Bay does over the next 365, and this time next year maybe Brady's got a ring solidifying his GOATness. And if he does it, if he wins, the Super Bowl's in Tampa Bay this year as well. Be the first quarterback to ever go to the Super Bowl and win it in his home stadium. So, we're not here to talk about football, but I always want to get my Brady GOATness in there because I know Ty does not agree with me when it comes to who is the greatest football player of all time. Isn't that correct, Ty?
Of course, we've got our own differing opinions, but it sounds like you need to get down here. I tell Julio all the time he needs to come down, and I'm moving to a new spot here shortly. And don't get me wrong, it's not the biggest spot, but we can make it work with us three if you want to check out some Bucks games, Julian. No problem. And
I'm saying Tampa's the city that never sleeps.
I haven't heard that one, but we'll see. My place is kind of quiet, so we might be actually being able to get some sleep. And I understand with young daughters that might be hard to come by nowadays.
I was just about to say, man, listen, Julio and I being dads, we could use some quiet nights because, as I was saying before the pod, 2.5 kids, the pregnant wife and kids who decide that they don't want to sleep right now is throwing my sleep schedule for a loop. And I don't know about Julio. Julio seems to be the more managed of the two fathers on this podcast right now.
Yeah, I sleep when I can, catch up when I can. A lot of naps.
Yeah, see,
I'm running a lot of sleep, though.
naps not just for the kids, but also for the parents, man. Most underrated thing, if you can nap, do it. I can't, so I'm pretty much screwed. But listen, let's get into it because obviously, we're into the 2020 off season. MLB wrapped up their season last month. Clayton Kershaw finally exorcised the demons of and ended the LA championship drought when it comes to the World Series. Winning the first time since, just days before I was born back in 1988. What are your thoughts on the wild COVID-19, pandemic baseball season?
Julio,
you want to kick us off here on that one?
It almost feels like it was so long ago. I don't know.
It's true.
What happened? No, great series. Tampa was fun to watch. They're showing you a bunch of ways to win. And we talked about it, before sadly the pod didn't come through. But how, they kind of ended the way they continued to do what they needed to do.
Right.
And unfortunately for them, it didn't work out. But you could say it did. I don't know. It was fun though. Clayton looked good.
Yeah. I think Julio, you and I were both in the Dominican Republic when everything shut down, right? And we were at that partnership program event, but it feels like so long ago. And I think one of the cool metaphors for the season is to see, like I think I mentioned this book last time we talked, the MVP machine, just to see how organizations have been able to keep their staffs, keep their players engaged, and ultimately keep baseball at the forefront of everyone's mind. So one of the, there's a lot of catch-22s that have happened in this year, so to speak. But I think one of them is definitely that, we're still very lucky to have the game. And obviously the game means a lot to a lot of people. So that's one thing I'm very thankful for.
Yeah. No, Julio, go ahead. What were you going to say, man?
No, a lot of fun moments. Like, it was just great to have baseball back. Like, when they said we're gonna have the 60-game season, I was all for it. I was excited. I was like, damn. I didn't remember you were reading those books, and I'm like, wow, that was this year. It's just so long ago, man.
Yeah.
And then thinking we're gonna go to spring training, that gets canceled, and then fly back here, and then haven't left since.
Yeah, it's one of those interesting things where, like you said, it was last month that it ended, but it feels like an absolute eternity ago. That being said, obviously with, a quick turnaround, things are right back into sort of like the spring of things, right? Because everyone's trying to get back to normalcy as best as they can. And obviously baseball is a little bit different because their timelines sort of favor what's going on right now. With the ending of their season, they did a pretty good job of obviously playing a condensed season, but still ending roughly around the same time that they normally do. And so their off-season plans and kickstart to 2021 isn't going to go under the same scrutiny as like an NBA, who's had the, shortest post off-season in major sports history going into this year. And so, it's interesting. I love it. I love when a guy like Trevor Bauer wins the Cy Young because he's just so unapologetic when it comes to his criticisms of Manfred, with how he plays the game, the fact that he wants baseball to be fun because he understands who's watching baseball now or who the MLB would like to have watch baseball now, because it's a game where you have a lot of old heads that love the traditions of the game, But in order for baseball to survive the next 10 to 15 years, there has to be a shift in viewership and in the way that the game is marketed. And there is no better marketed player in baseball than Trevor Bauer. And he does it himself. He's got like a great team along with him. If you are a fan of candid baseball talk, I would definitely say check out his YouTube page. Watch Momentum on YouTube. He's got some of the greatest interviews with former players and current players, and he really gets into like the X's and O's of baseball in a very, very fun way. And I'm hoping soon to be able to. I'm actually going to have his agent Rachel Luba on the show from Luba Sports to talk a little bit about baseball, women in sports, and sort of the unfortunate part of her being from UCLA. I was trying not to get into it on this pod because obviously Tyler he's an Oregon Ducks guy, and it's just listen. Hopefully they're going to play each other in the Pac-12 championship. That's all I'm going to say. Fingers crossed. That's what I'm looking forward to.
As short as the season is, there's a lot of season left.
Yeah, and 100%, and hopefully they both go 6 or 7-0 going into the championship game, and they can find themselves playing for the Pac-12 championship. But obviously 2020, a hell of a year, and so for the pod, today obviously I want to try to talk a little bit about the 2019-2020 international signing period. It was a little bit different than most international signing periods due to COVID. Looking ahead to next year's signing period, which is just, a few months away, January 15th or January 12th, I believe, 15th of next year. And then Tyler on the pod that could not be aired due to unfortunate bandwidth talked about having some stories from the road. And I'm hoping him and Julio will bless us with some great, stories from growing up into the international, scouting world. And then the last and not least, we're going to talk about, what to expect for the Blue Jays, as well as our top 5 greatest baseball video games of all time, which I then hope leads to another fun discussion. But, international scouting, not something, new. Blue Jays have had a well-documented history of success in the past when it comes to their international scouting with the likes of Carlos Delgado, Tony Fernandez, Vladdy Jr., who's there now, Calvin Escobar, and Roberto Osuna, just to name a few. And obviously 2020, been a year unlike most other ones. Their international signing period started, I believe, in July, just ended October 15th. And so now, with all the shutdowns and lockdowns sort of finishing and baseball resuming in countries like the Dominican and Cuba, where a lot of the international scouting is going to be taking place, the Blue Jays ended up signing 47 prospects, including number 27 of like the top 30, who was a shortstop from the DR. 34 players total signed in the last just closing weeks MLB wide, including 14 on the last day of the signing period. It's crazy. It's pandemonium. What are some takeaways from the 2019-2020 international signing period from you guys?
We call it, it's known as the Wild Wild West. Like when you talk international, it's the, hey man, it's the Wild Wild West up there. Yeah, man. So last year, I think on July 2nd, the signing date, we had to make like 42 contracts.
Jeez.
And then obviously as the period continued, we were able to sign a couple more. But this was a huge signing class, like ton of names, ton of arms, ton of really interesting prospects. Like all of them are skilled. They all have something, which is why they're with us. So Raquelvin DeCastro would have been the guy on the list that you're talking about.
Yes.
Shortstop. Really fun to watch. I remember seeing him with our guy Harry Einbinder. Great guy for us in the organization. So we saw Raquelvin, super athletic, twitchy actions on the infield, and then just a guy who was able to put the ball in play. And you're just hoping with some strength as he gets older, it's going to develop into more power. But just a lot. There's a lot of tools.
Right.
So he was like the main dude, that the famous guy, as they said. But international is just the Wild Wild West, man. You go go out to these events, and not even kidding, man, you'll see one guy maybe for the first time ever, and he kills it, and you find out he closed a deal or he made a verbal agreement
Right.
later. It's you got to move quick.
Yeah.
You can't sleep in the market.
Literal no sleep sometimes, unfortunately. But I think one of the coolest things, or I guess when you boil it down, one of the most relatable things for me that I've learned from Andrew Tinnish, who oversees our department, is look for things that stand out. And when you're looking at these guys that we have signed and that we have targeted, and just in general too, there's a lot of things to like across the board with everyone, and it's going to be fun to see how they grow up and how they use those things that have stood out to their advantage and build on other portions of their game to hopefully make the big league level.
Yeah, I mean, some other notable signings. Just did some quick research. We got Estevan Machado. I don't know if it's Robert or Robertis.
Uh-huh.
And then Piniel Brito. I mean, obviously these names, not household names yet, but neither was a Roberto Osuna. Neither was. I mean, Vladdy Guerrero was probably the exception because from the womb, Vladdy was in the spotlight. And so it's a little bit different that way. But I mean, what can we sort of talk about the 2019 class of international prospects? What are we hoping for? What are we seeing? And what is the potential timeline for these guys to make a jump? Because we never thought Alejandro Kirk, and we talked about this on the other pod, we never thought that human missile was going to be fast tracked to the 2019 the 2020 Blue Jays, but he took the baseball world by storm and had ESPN, MLB Network really talking about this guy's swing, being able to hit almost pretty much everything, and he was hitting bullets to right field. What are some thoughts on some of these guys that we signed, and is there a chance we see any of these guys in the near future?
Yeah, I think it all depends. Right, like a guy like Kirk, such a mature approach, like very advanced for his age, especially when we had seen him long ago. So that's a guy like extremely knowledgeable with the plate, knew the strike zone, knew his approach, what worked for him, and that's why you see a guy like that really able to succeed. So you're thinking, you got to look at this list of like 40 something names, and you're thinking, okay, like of course some are more advanced, some are raw, some are going to take more time. So a lot of them you got to be patient with. Of course, they're only like 16 years old.
Yeah.
So it's going to take a while, but I want to talk like Pena Brito is like a very interesting story. Like this is an example of the Wild Wild West. Like you always had to be watching players. It's never like guys just come out of nowhere. So we're at an event and we're there to see, a couple big names. And Brito's been a guy that we've seen before, but not everyone had seen him. And then he comes in and he was just kind of like a filler. We said, we need another bat to kind of like give these guys some breaks. And then he just killed it, hitting bombs everywhere. Like, dude, he was fun to watch. So that's an example of just like, keep your eyes open and continue to follow players because they like develop so quickly. Like you'll see a kid at 13 and you're okay, looks interesting. 6 months later, it's an animal, completely different dude. Might have grown a couple inches. Power has like blossomed. Like it happens like that. So that's why scouts on the ground are super important, and it's constant updates. Okay, go check this guy. Send new video. It's really like that. It's super quick. You'll get emails at like 1 a.m. of, hey, we just uploaded so and so. Like check it out. Like move it over. It's a market that doesn't sleep. It really doesn't.
Yeah, sometimes I have no clue how those guys do it down there. They're incredible at their jobs, and it's just what they're able to put forward and identify even in kids as young as Julio saying is 13 is remarkable.
Yeah,
we saw a 12-year-old this year. Crazy.
Like that's insane to me. We're talking about a 13-year-old who, hasn't even matured yet, being on a list of names for MLB teams to be like, let's watch out for this guy. Right. And it's like, I remember when I was 13, I mean, I was probably on a list when it came to like detention or like
Hey,
being like the principal's office, but I was definitely not on anyone's radar for anything other than being like a troublemaker. But I mean, but it's crazy because I know we've talked about this and it's well known. Guys who are being scouted from the DR, from Cuba, from South American countries. I mean, this is their ticket out of those situations, right? This is the chance to be able to provide for their family, and their family really are putting everything into one hope, and that is one day our son is going to take us away, or at least make it he can be successful, and then hopefully, either move us out there or be able to provide so that, we're not in the situation that we are. What is there like a memory of a single player or a time where you got to see and really feel that difference being made for a player? Let's start with you, Julio, and then Ty, jump in there, and I want to hear your story.
every July 2nd signing period, I've been lucky. We've been lucky to go out to the Dominican, and then we'll go out to. In the past, I've been to the Venezuelan one as well, and they all come in with their families. Everyone's crying. It's eye opening because you see it, you feel it, you see what they're going through, and then obviously some of them you have more history with, just based on the scouting process.
Right.
You get to know some of the guys, you get to hear their stories. Some guys who don't eat regularly, like 3 meals, like that 3 meals a day thing. Like some guys don't eat well, and then this is their ticket. They sign a contract, and all they got to worry about is baseball now. Let's work, and then hopefully we can make this a bigger thing for them and their family, because it's not just they're really not there just for them.
Right.
A lot of it is they're literally supporting their family. Like
Right.
they become a parent essentially. So it's an interesting dynamic that we've seen, and it's unfortunate, obviously, but it's just the way it is, like down there.
Mm. Yeah, and an additional point to that is you see people that come from the more poorer countries like Venezuela, or an example for me would be Cuba, and I've developed a unique relationship with one of our players from Cuba, who is just a special human being in the way that, one, he goes about his work, and two, just who he is as a person. And to hear some of the things that he talks about, when him and I get on the phone, we try to get on the phone just to chit chat about once a week, just to see how each other are doing. And I always ask him how his mom's doing. Is his mom still back in Cuba? And to hear that, not only are they struggling through COVID, but they're struggling just through the normal Cuban way of life, which is now poor access to food. Electricity is poor down there. So it really makes you have a general greater appreciation for how you grew up, and the luxuries that you are accustomed to living in countries such as ourselves do.
Now, it's interesting you say that, because like I'll take one quick sort of like sidetrack when it comes to Cuba. Yoel Romero, UFC fighter, talked about being in the Olympic program. And you would think that when you have an Olympic athlete or a group of athletes who are going to represent your country, that they're going to be sort of well taken care of, and they're going to live better than maybe some other just regular folk. And to hear that that's not actually the case, to hear that they're living in not the greatest conditions, that your food consumption will be based on how well you perform as an incentive, it just goes to show you that, being in countries like, a Cuba or Dominican, that just because you may be a great player or athlete or successful does not necessarily mean that you come or get to experience amazing things in your country. It's really when you leave that you allow yourself to make it somewhere else and then be able to provide back for your country, whether it's your family, your friends, or your community, whomever it is. It's crazy because if you look at Cuba, if you look at the DR, if you look at Venezuela, some of the best baseball players have come from those countries, and there's a pipeline of these athletes. And yet, again, we haven't seen things like adequate facilities necessarily being made, or accommodations to sort of accommodate these pipelines of athletes to try to enhance the way of life, so that we can have more athletes being successful and families being, taken care of. But I don't know. I guess you guys see it a little bit more, being there and dealing with the families and the friends and the situations, for you to really get a sense of accomplishment when these athletes sign their contracts and change their families' lives forever.
Right. So, and it's to that point too. It's you read the stories of what these Cuban players have to go through to get themselves out. Like you look into Yasiel Puig was a highly publicized case
Yeah.
of defection. Guys like Brian Pena, even the Hernandez brothers, Levon and El Duque, trying to get out. And then a lot of times they have to leave their families behind and aren't able to communicate with them on for years.
Yeah.
So it's just like that extra sense of bonding once you get to know these players more than just players. You get to know them as individuals,
Right.
and how they interact with you and how they interact with the game, and how their culture has molded them to behave on a personal level. And that's part that sticks out to me, is that, as much as we talk about, identifying the next crop of World Series contending players, we're all people at the end of the day too. So that's what relates it back to another personal aspect of this game, which, whatever your stance is aside on how the game is evolving nowadays, there's still a human aspect to it, and it's more so than just on the field. It's definitely off the field as well.
I mean, baseball probably does this better than any other organization, and correct me if I'm wrong, but what they do when it comes to their recognition using the Roberto Clemente Award is unlike anything in any other major sports leagues, right? If you think about what the NFL does, or NHL or NBA, they don't really have an award that really shows the like humanitarianism that comes with, the Roberto Clemente Award, with the fact that, you're doing so much for the community when it comes to baseball, and helping communities because of your position. Is there an organization, or is there a better award for someone outside of like a league MVP than being nominated and winning the Roberto Clemente Award?
That's a tough question.
I mean, so the NFL has the Walter Payton Man of the Year Award, which I'm now remembering. But again, I think the Roberto Clemente, when it comes to like just the community driven aspect of it, is above and beyond, especially when we look at how many non-North American players we have in a very North American game.
I don't know if there's a higher personal award in the game, and if there is, I'm sure there's things that each organization does to highlight personal achievements of players, or off the field achievements for that matter. But I wouldn't know if there's like a higher than a Roberto Clemente Award, I guess. So I'd say that's probably the highest honor one could get from a personal standpoint.
Now, with such a tight turnaround, obviously, with finishing on October 15th, the 2019-2020 signing period, getting into, the January 15th is just right around the corner. And with all of these COVID restrictions when it comes to getting back up and getting out to some of these countries and baseball actually being played, what is it like being part of the international scouting department for the Blue Jays right now? What are you guys sort of doing? How is the scouting going? And how many, on average, how many contracts do you anticipate, having to be ready for January 15th of next year?
Yeah, so it's obviously been a lot of Zoom calls since the beginning of this, but it's been great, man. We've been staying busy. We've been working on a bunch of other things, staying in contact with our scouts, making sure everyone's good. We've been kind of just going over our older players, just saying, hey, what did we see before? What can we do better? It's kind of, I guess, reviewing years past, but at the same time going over a list now, and then kind of making a plan for when it would pick up, and which it has. So scouting's obviously opened up, and MLB, as well as us as the Blue Jays, we put our own protocols in to make sure everyone's out there and safe. So it almost feels kind of like somewhat back to normal, because we're getting a bunch of videos in, scouting reports are coming back in, guys are out, staying in contact, talking about players, like, hey man, just saw so and so, look good, So it's a nice feeling of being in 2019,
Fair enough. Now, I mean, it's no secret, and I've been, again, doing a little bit of research. The Blue Jays tied to 2 players as of right now that are likely to sign. And we say likely, obviously things can change. Can't come to an agreement ahead of time. But we have the likes of, just want to make sure I get his name right, Manuel Beltre, one of the names floating around there, as well as Jimenez, and I can't remember his first name, Martin Jimenez right now, from Venezuela. What are some of the things as baseball scouts that we're looking for when it comes to offering a contract? Obviously, we know that we're looking for certain tools along the way, but what is like that last thing that you aim to see before you're like, listen, this is a guy that we need to get a contract to because we want him to be with us and not, some other organization?
Do you want to start this one?
So I think there's no one size fits all. There's no like cookie cutter aspect to it. Just because a guy's got insane raw power doesn't mean he's going to be able to make consistent contact at the highest level, right? And one of the things that I've learned a lot of is trying to figure out what they can be down the road and using that. All right, there's no cookie cutter method. How do we make it kind of boil down into what they can be? So there's no like one last thing. And I know that was what the question is, but it's what they do so well that sets them apart, and that's their separator. And that's what's going to carry them to the highest level. So, again, just because a guy can hit the ball 3,000 miles, if he can't make contact, does that really matter? Or conversely, if a guy can throw the ball off the mound 92 miles an hour as a 16-year-old, can he throw strikes?
Right.
Right. So you got to, at the end of the day, you got to be able to play. And sure, through repetition and through practice, you can learn how to play. But what at the root is going to separate them from somebody else and be able to carry them to the top level?
Yeah, I would say you also want a guy that wants to play. He's not just there because he's good. That's a guy that is going to get better. The guys who sign might be, okay, I did what I wanted to do and I'm out.
Right.
And I'd say consistency, like a guy that's consistently out there working, consistently hitting the ball, consistently making plays. Like that's a big one for me. And then just an athlete, just a guy who moves well. And baseball is different, right? Like a guy like Kirk, you'd probably see him and you'd be like, oh, he doesn't look like an athlete, but he is a baseball. He's an athlete. Like the way he moves behind the plate is pretty impressive. You wouldn't think a guy like that, when you see him visually, you don't think he moves well, but he's surprising, man. He moves really well.
Yeah, athleticism and flexibility for sure.
Now, Ty, you mentioned this when you sidestepped the question because there was no real answer to my question, as you so eloquently sort of put it. And that is signing prospects. It's really like a numbers game because there is no certainty. And I think of a guy, and the only reason I sort of pay attention to prospects is I'm in a very highly competitive fantasy baseball league, which I finally took the title of. And, I have a guy, thank you. I have a guy like Mackenzie Gore, for instance, who right now is showing all of the right things, but is still very much a prospect. Who knows what's going to end up happening with him? I also have a guy on my team like Forrest Whitley, who again has all of these praises, and all of a sudden injury after setback after short season is starting to sort of work against him, when other guys like a Christian Javier is getting an opportunity to play and making the most of it. Sometimes it's not just about skill, but it's about timing and opportunity, because you don't get your shot at that time and you take a step or two back. Sometimes, when we're signing, for instance, 47 international prospects, that's just international. That's not even talking about a regular year of drafting and guys who are currently even in your system, right? So we're thinking, I don't know, we'll give a rough number. How many rounds are there in the baseball draft on a regular year?
I think it's down to 40 now.
Okay, yeah. So let's say 40 plus 47 signings, that's 87, not to mention guys who we already have in the system. you know, if we have 4 guys who break through at any point in the next, you know, 3 to 5 years, that'd be pretty successful. But that means that there's like, you know, 100, 200 plus guys who are not going to make that step. And so the prospect game is really like what Oklahoma City Thunder's Christie is trying to do right now. He's got like 18 first round picks in the next, like, you know, some odd years. And he's hoping it leads to like 1 superstar, which is like insane. But, you know, when you have guys like Gabby Moreno, you have guys like Otto Lopez, you got guys like Josh Palacios, who, by the way, just all got added to the 40-man roster to avoid being eligible for that Rule 5 draft coming up in December. I mean, it's hard because you have to sort of look at who do we think can take the next steps with no guarantees, because for the first time in a long time, the Blue Jays are pretty deep prospect-wise at the catcher position. What is it about? And Julio, you've talked about him before, a Gabby Moreno who's just, you know, different. And what can we sort of expect if he were to make it to the big leagues? What can we sort of expect from a guy like that for the Toronto Blue Jays?
Yeah. Before we get to Gabby, I think the phrase was, it's a good problem.
Yes.
Good problem to have. Gabby Moreno, he's man, I got to see him. I was fortunate enough to see him in Tricky League. So when he first got on board with the Jays, it's like the development program that we have. So what I noticed back then, because I could speak to that, was very, very like high contact percentage type guy, tons of contact, tremendous athlete. Like he was a shortstop prior to coming in with us. We switched him to catching, and the transition was instant. Like it was so easy for him. Showed the arm, showed the like good hands, leader on the field, like good teammate. So his thing was, I didn't know how much power he was going to get to. That was my thing. I was like, can he hit for power? Can he hit for power? Because the contact's there, and then he's so good at making contact that he would start giving away at bats because he didn't. It was more of this like approach that I would see. He's like, he doesn't want to strike out.
Right.
He doesn't really want to walk, it looks like. So he's just kind of swinging at a bunch of stuff. And then it's cool because such a great development that we have. So he's getting older, starting to get more aware of his abilities, starts shrinking in his zone, knows I got to lay off these pitches. I'm going to get more success if I'm a little bit more patient. Now you start seeing me hitting more home runs. Now you start seeing him hitting the ball everywhere for power. So it's been really cool to see his development. And then, yeah, he's a guy that wants to play. He wants to be good, and he's a good teammate. So when eventually he makes it, I think you're going to just see a guy who can hit, and solid defender as well. So you can probably do a bit of everything. I think he's such a good athlete that you could probably put him on the infield still, you know, if you wanted to. Like he's pretty versatile. He's a fun player. And Tyler, you have some history with him too.
Yeah, in the GCL in 2018, it was just obvious, you know, leaps and bounds of where he was at compared to, you know, catchers from around the league in that league. And I understand it's rookie ball, but it's just fun to watch, special player, and you kind of know when you're watching it, like, all right, this is what it looks like at the grassroots level. This is what it looks like.
The swing, like everything. He was just different.
And it's interesting because like catcher is the position where people take the most liberties. You want a guy who's solid behind the plate, and if he can hit, I mean, that's fantastic. If you look around the league, when Gary Sanchez sort of broke in with the Yankees, it was like, oh my goodness, we could bat him 5th in our lineup. And if we have no holes in our lineup, man, we are a devastating team. And then all of a sudden, when the catching does become a liability and the injuries begin to pack up, then you're like, you know what? Let's go get like an Eric Kratz, because we know he's going to be solid behind the plate. He's going to call a good game. It's like the position that they don't want to give away. But when you have that position and you're typically your 9 spot and you can bat him in the 6th spot, or you can count him as not like an automatic out or a turn your lineup over kind of guy, I mean, that's a game changer. It's a game changer, and that's the type of thing that you see from, I'll use the example, like a Will Smith for the LA Dodgers. I mean, was not the number one catcher in that organization 2 years ago. Due to injury, due to opportunity, he sort of leapfrogs ahead of like an Austin Barnes and a Kaiber Ruiz, gets an opportunity and makes the most of it. And now it's, how do you get rid of a guy like that? The Jays were hoping that Danny Jansen was going to be that guy. Obviously, he was a great prospect, great hitting guy. He's taking some strides in order to sort of get that back. But it definitely, correct me if I'm wrong, when you get a catcher in your organization that can fill in that spot, that can really sort of set the tone for protecting the guys ahead of them and sort of behind them in the lineup, you pencil yourself into a World Series team already, because now you have an advantage over, 27 other teams in the major leagues.
Yeah. if like at the end of the day, and Julio, you'll say the same thing, I hope, but if you can hit, you're going to play regardless, regardless if you're the worst athlete, regardless if you're the worst arm, your glove is terrible, your hands are stone, you're going to play if you can hit the ball. And so if they've got an extra tool, like these catchers, they got a glove and they're a wall behind the plate, nothing gets by them, whether it's a breaking ball in the dirt or, solid receiving hand or some catch and throw skills, to strong arm to get guys going to second base or even to third. That's remarkable. So to have someone like that who can do both sides at a premium position, then yeah, that's what you're looking for. And
it's interesting because before the podcast, I was trying to see if I could hang a jersey up of a Toronto baseball catcher, former Toronto baseball catcher, who, again, I don't think could have started his career as a Blue Jay any better. Pretty sure first at bat home run. Pretty sure he had
he hit the walk off.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. It was he had the greatest meteoric rise to a career as you could have, and then all of a sudden got run out of town. He ends up playing for a couple other teams, becomes an analyst. Mr. JP Arancibia, that's my guy. But again, that just shows you, right? It's if you can hit, you can play. However, if in that position you can't throw anyone out, and I think he's got one of the worst, throwing guys out at second base percentages as you possibly could. It just showed that when one thing doesn't go so well, it starts to seep in and affect the rest of your game, because now you're solely thinking about it. And then, we talked about it. The depth of baseball is unlike any other sport. If you can't do the job, there's 30 other guys in your organization that play your position that are just chomping at the bit for an opportunity. I know.
You guys that like Miguel Cabrera, he's been able to hit for 400 years seemingly. And, he's no longer playing shortstop. I think he signed as a shortstop. Julio, you might have to correct me on that one. But I know he came up and was playing outfield for the Marlins at some point. And then, as he grows and gets older and fills out, you move to third or move to first, and he's still being able to hit. So put the bat to the ball, they'll find a spot for you.
Yeah, listen, I'm glad you brought that up, because it's something that skipped my mind, but I definitely want to talk about real quick. Florida Marlins, now Miami Marlins, one of the greatest developing organizations. At least, a few years ago, they would develop, they'd win the World Series, then they would ship off of all of their players, and then just rebuild the system. Very similar to a Tampa Bay is sort of doing now, where they develop all these great guys and they have to start shipping out a Matthew Liberatore to St. Louis. But shout out Miami Marlins. Kim, Kim NG, is that her last name? And
Kim.
Yeah, and so first female GM in, I believe, major sports. Absolutely incredible. Hearing about her being with Cashman back with the Yankees, and he called her invaluable. They would not get rid of her for any reason. Played such a tremendous part in the development of that team and in baseball. Incredible opportunity now with the Miami Marlins, walking into a fairly good situation with that prospect pool and the organization. Obviously, they They made the COVID playoffs, as we'll call it. Had an opportunity, I believe, won their first series and actually ended up losing to, I think it was Atlanta. And so, what does that mean? And I'm gonna direct this to to Julio, and only in the sense of, and Tyler obviously chime in too, but like, what does it mean for you as a girl dad? Seeing,
Yeah, say as a girl dad, it was like I loved seeing that, man. And it was one of those like Kim Ming's been a baseball lifer. Like she honestly should have had a role a long time ago. And I also think it's not being talked about enough.
yeah,
This is huge. Like it almost felt like it happened. Talked about it for a couple hours. Done.
yeah,
We're like, this is an absolutely huge moment for baseball. It should be celebrated. And like I don't know. Hopefully, this gets more women into the game, more involved. Like you almost got to step back and think, okay, so this woman, Kim Ming, who's done so much for the game, it took her this long to get this spot.
yeah.
So we got, as baseball, as a baseball organization, as a baseball person, like let's check ourselves. Like, what are we doing here? Like, how do we get better? Essentially, yeah. But yeah, as a girl dad though, it's a wonderful thing. Like, kind of you kind of hope it's kind of level the playing field a little bit, opening more doors. Yeah.
And I think when you have like that rich history, and I mean, obviously, I mentioned Rachel Luba as an example earlier. Rachel Luba, prominent, and I'll call her prominent now because she represents the 2020 National League Cy Young winner in Trevor Bauer. Makes no excuses. Like she is out there. She's on social media. She is, very vocal. She's got her own podcast, the Corked Up podcast, where she talks about things like breaking down arbitration, what it's like in negotiations, free agency, all of that kind of stuff. And the fact that she is breaking barriers and the fact that she is a role model, someone that I can look up to as a father of two young girls and say, hey, I am glad that we have someone paving the way that shows you that hard work, dedication. Just because you are a female doesn't mean that you have to be on the sidelines or do, X, Y, and Z jobs. That you can do any job if you possess the skills to do it, the perseverance, because it does take perseverance. I'm sure it is not easy for a woman trying to break in to a boys club like Major League Baseball. And they're unapologetically here. They're going to continue to, destroy the glass ceiling that is above them. And I wish Kim Ng nothing but success. I hope to God it is not just a PR stunt, that it really is on the merits of her passion and knowledge of the game, because I would love to see, more bench coaches, a manager, break into the Major League Baseball like we're seeing like a Becky Hammond for the San Antonio Spurs. You really get opportunities to showcase that the best candidate for a job deserves to get that job, right? And I think for so long it wasn't necessarily like that. When you have a guy like a Theo Epstein, no disrespect to my man who broke the curse, but I mean, fairly young executive to get an opportunity to run an organization like the Boston Red Sox, whereas you have someone who's been busting their hump like a Kim Ng for decades, now finally getting an opportunity because of a very progressive thinking Derek Jeter.
Yeah, absolutely. I would love to hear like a woman's perspective on it, just to hear what their thought process was prior to this. Like you said, hey, perseverance, you might be the best candidate, but you're not getting through. So how's that make you feel mentally, like drained, obviously, but to hear what they're thinking now, because we can say what we want to say, but we're not going through their experience. We have our own experiences and we can speak on that, but it'd be great to hear, from a woman's point of view, just how impactful this Kim Ng's role is, right?
Yeah, Ty, jump in here. What are your thoughts on what Miami is doing? And what do you say when you see a resume stacked up like hers to only now getting an opportunity to jump into a high executive role in Major League Baseball?
Well, one of the individuals that Julio and I went to scout school with was a female, and she's probably the most knowledgeable individual of just baseball in general that I've ever met.
Mm.
And just to echo everything that Julio's saying, like, it is the best person for the job that should get the job. And it's exciting just to see somebody that is busted their butts and, quote unquote, paid dues, so to speak, get the opportunity that has been presented to her. So it's very exciting. And, as baseball is continually progressively thinking, it's exciting to see where they can go from here.
Now, I'm going to throw it out to you, non-baseball related, kind of baseball related. If you had to say that there was going to be a major sports league that has the first female commissioner, what league do you think that would be?
I got this. It's going to be the NBA, and it's going to be Satu Sabali, who was a lady duck a few years ago. And she was the Dallas, and I apologize, I'm forgetting their franchise team name, but the first round pick, third overall pick last WNBA draft. And she's going to be the first NBA commissioner that is female.
Interesting. Julio, what about you? What do you think?
I gotta go NBA as well. Like, they're so ahead with some stuff, man. It's impressive.
Yeah, it's a clean sweep. I think the way the NBA is going, it's definitely that way. But that being said, that's also been a product of what Adam Silver has done, right? When you look at some of the previous commissioners in any sports league, but even like a David Stern, who ends up, leaving right around the time the Donald Sterling saga breaks out with the LA Clippers. Stern wasn't exactly, rest in peace, wasn't exactly, the golden boy when it came to commissioners the way Adam Silver definitely has. Now, that part of that is a product of the times. He has embraced the things that have sort of gone on, and maybe other commissioners have not had the need to do so. But we've seen a Roger Goodell fumble the football a little bit when it comes to some of the, social action that he's been called upon to sort of tackle, and now sort of taking some steps back and, embracing things probably the way he should have initially. But again, if we don't have Adam Silver, right, and we have David Stern, do you still feel that it's going to be the NBA, or would that change your mind just a little bit?
Yeah, like you said, I think Adam Silver is like the GOAT. Honestly, I think this guy's like pushed that sport forward. I don't even tremendously. Like everything he says, like it's not like it doesn't. How do I say this? It just makes sense. It's not like he's trying to avoid a problem. Like he says what he needs to say. I don't know. I think he doesn't hide behind anything.
That's fair. That's a good point.
And then you have owners like Mark Cuban, who's very outspoken as progressive minded on Twitter too, advocating for abolishing duopolies in American politics, for example. So I just, where the NBA is as compared to, other like sports organizations, is remarkable and somewhat of a model for others.
I just think look how they shut down the NBA, then US starts kind of, okay, we're going to follow suit. Probably not right, but they were the first, big organized body to do something about it. They come up with their bubble idea, flawless, tremendous job. So
now again, I think we have to look at the Rudy Gobert situation a little bit, because they were, again, it's Adam Silver's handling of situations that puts him in the spotlight, right? He has a player that's tested positive. He needs to make a decision. And so far, on the decisions that he's had to have made, he's coming out on the right end of it, right? Donald Sterling, he took on an owner, which most commissioners won't do, as we've seen from, Gary Bettman, and we've seen from Roger Goodell. Doesn't typically like to go after the owners who he sort of represents as the commissioner. Adam Silver was like, listen, this is the right thing to do, and therefore I'm going to do it. And therefore, number one, his stock had risen. Now, Rudy Gobert tests positive. He says, okay, we're going to cancel the season. His stock rises again. And then you have the other organizations that don't have positive tests just yet take a step back and say, okay, maybe let's push the brakes just a little bit. And the NBA, I mean, has 4 minority owners in the league, which I believe might be tied for the most. I can only think of a handful that would be for any other organizations, but there are not a lot of minority owners when it comes to, North American major sports. So NBA, give you credit. Rob Manfred, got some things to work on, my friend. Got some things to work on. But before, I don't want to get you in trouble. That's the commissioner of the organization for which you work for. Let's get a little light. Let's have a little fun with this next question. Now, Ty, you better come with the knowledge here, because you're the one who brought this up to me, and that is, can we talk about baseball games? And we talked about video games. So I came up with a top 5 list. Not a lot to choose from, and I didn't pick like years. I picked more of franchises. Little controversial, I'm not gonna lie. I have reasonings for almost all of them, but I'm gonna start off at number 5. David Letterman style. MLB Slugfest. Okay, and so I have MLB Slugfest making the list, not because it was like a great baseball game, but you could slide tackle the catcher as you were coming home for a play at the plate. It was a button function that you could choose to slide tackle. And it's not like a slide tackle like you're sliding into a catcher. It's more of like a drop kick action. And therefore, number 5 on my list, MLB Slugfest.
I didn't like that game. It wasn't realistic enough for me.
What do you mean? Slide tackling a catcher isn't realistic for you?
Well, I was a catcher growing up, so I've obviously got a little affinity and affection towards the collisions that happen at home plate. So I didn't play that game all too much growing up, but I'm very familiar with that one.
Yeah.
Hold on, are we all going through number 5?
Yeah, go. Yeah, if you've got a list, number 5, Julio, what do you got?
All right. This is more just like me. I was like, okay, what was some stuff that I had good memories with?
Okay.
So triple play baseball was one that I used to play after practice with a good buddy of mine.
Okay.
I think there's 2 of us. So triple play baseball, I was like, all right, that's got to be in my top 5.
Okay.
Yeah. So I made my list based on, I guess, use and which ones I used most.
Okay.
So my number 5 was the Tap Baseball series.
Oh, listen, I am down for that game. We created like a league with my softball team, my men's slow pitch league in like 2018. That was the shit. I am on board. I like that one.
Yeah, I used to play a lot of Tap Baseball when I was with the Red Sox in 2016 in the Dominican, because we didn't have video game there. We didn't have, Wi-Fi was kind of so that
just like in Florida.
Yeah, right. So that was the okay. I'm done with my work for today. I'm sitting here doing nothing. Let's play some Tap Baseball.
Oh, I like it, man. I like it. All right, hit me with number 4, Ty. We'll do snake style.
Number 4 is the Show series.
Oh.
And
so low. That's too low.
There's reasons to it, but the Show series, I think, obviously what they're doing right now with Diamond Dynasty and the online leagues with Diamond Dynasty is remarkable. So but I had to strategically place it there.
Okay.
Was the top 3 once we get to that.
All right, Julio, what do you got?
Number 4 for me, Ken Griffey Baseball, baby.
Oh, okay. We defer on this one a little bit.
Memories of like video games and baseball. Ken Griffey.
Yeah.
Bomb.
I had Wii Sports at number 4.
Wii.
Because again, obviously when we're sticking with the theme of like what's realistic, which is maybe kind of like what I based my list on, realism meets like how much fun. I defy you to have more fun playing like home run derby style baseball with something other than Wii Sports, because there is nothing better than, hitting that like sneaky fastball on your buddy who doesn't know how to throw the fastball, or like that crazy screwball and you just have him whiffing, just like making an ugly ass swing. So Wii Sports, number 4 for me. Number 3, I had Ken Griffey Jr. Again, realism. Any game that has a cheat code you could punch in about like any contact being a home run was like, I think it was the Angels in the outfield code name. I can't remember what it was. But yeah, Ken Griffey Jr. baseball. I actually have it in the other room. That and Ken Griffey Slugfest. So I mean, the Ken Griffey series coming in number 3 for me.
Yeah. My number 3, I'm going MLB The Show because it's absolute fire. But 1 and 2 are just classics.
Okay,
So
I listen. I'm excited because our lists are just not the same.
What's in front? It's not a shot at MLB The Show. It's just 1 and 2 are just absolute classics.
All right, Ty, break my heart here. Let's go.
I did pick Ken Griffey Jr.
All right, there we go. Let's go.
And I'm having an odd feeling that we're about to reach the same consensus number 1 overall pick here. But
all right, give us your number 2.
All right, number 2, backyard baseball.
Ooh, that's a good one.
Yeah,
that's a good one.
Can't really get better than Pete Wheeler and Pablo Sanchez.
All right, Julio, what do you got at number 2?
Backyard baseball.
Oh man, I'm breaking the trend here. At number 2, I had The Show. I had The Show at number 2 because for me, in all the baseball games that I played, mechanically, it is the most realistic baseball game to date. It's been that sort of way. They've sort of the create a career. For me, rivals that of like an EA Sports Madden. Because it was just so different, and it allowed you to approach things in such a different way. For me, the multi-aspects part of the game, outside of just playing a season or a postseason or a dynasty, I think it really lent to a great baseball experience. And then I have a feeling, Ty, you're right. Consensus number 1 has gotta be MVP baseball 2005, right? Like
down the horns.
Man Ram. I mean, we were talking.
My biggest part for MVP, outside of the soundtrack, which I still use it on my Spotify to work out to, or actually not my Spotify, I'm using somebody else's Spotify. But
oh boy,
the reason being was in the franchise mode or the dynasty mode or whatever they called it, was they had the minor league teams,
right?
And I grew up around minor league baseball, so I always picked the Braves, and I was always like, "Oh, Dad, I could use your team." Look, but then I would turn fair trades off, so I had Ichiro leading off in my AA team, and then they had the legendary players. I had I can't even remember at this point, but I just would remember using those and then looking at their stats as I'm simming seasons or playing seasons, and guys like Stan Musial or like Chipper Jones's AAA third baseman, and
right,
and got hitting 800. So that was my favorite part of those series, outside of the soundtrack, of course.
Julio, why do you love MVP baseball so much?
Oh man, it's nostalgic. Bombs with Manny, like you were saying. It was like, I don't know, I think the time, it was just such an advancement as opposed to what you had been playing before.
Right.
And there was just so many good memories playing that game.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
The memory definitely play a part in that.
The legend.
Now,
John
for me, there's something about Man Ram staring down the barrel on the cover of the game, where it's just like, it was at that time, like, I dare you to pitch to me, because this is going like 480 over left center, and I'm just throwing my hands up because there's nothing that you can do about it. And then we had, the great soundtrack. We were talking about artists such as, Hot Heat. What was it? Stereo Heads, who had Walkie Talkie?
Yeah, a Stereogram.
Stereogram. I remember that was probably the first video game where I was like, I'm going to download the songs from the soundtrack and listen to it when I'm not playing the game, because
account, right?
Yeah, it was just like, I was like, all right, let me hit like R3 so it advances the next song on my PlayStation so I can like see what the next song is, and I'm like, all right, I got all like 50 tracks. I'm gonna get 13 of those onto like my portable. 2005, I didn't have an iPod, I don't think. I had some like USB weird thing I'd plug my headphones into. I only got like 8 songs on there, and I just rotate that playlist. I think it until you get to like the NBA 2K games, where like the soundtracks now are just they're just like complete fire, but they're designed to be. I don't think MLB 2005 set out to be like, let's get like the greatest soundtrack, because it's such a mix of genres that it just works, right? Like for me, it just works. And then, we'd be remiss to not talk about one of the greatest aspects of MVP Baseball 2005. And EA Sports has had a history of doing this. And I want to pull up my notes so I get the names absolutely correct, because it is an interesting thing that they do. And that is, you get a guy like John Dowd. You get a guy like
Hall of Famer.
Did you read the article MLB.com put out on him the other day?
No, I didn't. I knew that there was an actual baseball player who had like, I don't know, like a handful of actual at bats. But I know that the John Dowd of this game and the history about this was actually like a producer for the EA Sports video games. But for those of you who are not well kept in the history of John Dowd in MLB 2005, MVP Baseball 2005, it is Barry Bonds was a monster in the, what is it, starting in 01, having like a ridiculous 04 season leading into 2005. And he decided to not sign his player rights over to EA Sports. And so EA Sports couldn't put him in the game, because then otherwise, he would be getting all these like royalties, and he would make tons of money. Very forward thinking of Barry Bonds. And so what they have to do is they're going to have a replica of Barry Bonds, but like almost like Bizarro Barry Bonds, if I could use that word right, like Bizarro Superman. They picked like this huge, same measurements, a height and weight, but like this white dude with like long hair, had all the same statistics, named him John Dowd, and was a 2-year phenom in MVP Baseball, Hall of Fame career. I can't remember who it was. It might have been Yasiel Puig who did it. I'm trying to remember who literally tweeted that John Dowd would be a Hall of Famer if he had the longevity of his career, because he was just an absolute monster. EA Sports did it with Pablo Sanchez and Emmanuel Imeniki. Those are some of the other GOATs that resembled other players that they didn't know how to have the rights to. What was it like for you guys playing, if you did, as John Dowd, and how unfair was it to have him in the game?
Nuts. It's like Mike Vick from Madden 05.
Yeah.
I think he was the cover athlete that year.
04.
04, thank you. 05 was Ray Lewis, yeah. Right? Okay, thank you. That was the level of absurdity that resulted from his usage.
Yeah, he's like a creative player. You just max out everything.
Yep.
Yeah. He literally was like the human cheat code of a video game, but like they just so unapologetically was like, all right, you're not gonna be Barry Bonds in our game, but you exist in our universe. Yeah. And you're the greatest player, but you will not be known as Barry Bonds. You're going to be known as John Dowd, a producer for EA Sports, literally the greatest baseball player in video game history.
Yeah, and to relate it to that comment you just had about no fear, it was whenever he stepped into the box, it was, okay, now how do you pitch to this guy? And I think like Greg Maddux also said, Barry Bonds was the easiest guy he's ever pitched to, because all you got to do is not pitch to him, right? Or something along those lines. I'm probably misattributing that quote. But even, and then relating it back to our earlier discussion about what sets guys apart and what do we look for? What's kind of like the deciding factor when scouting guys is you want guys that are not afraid of anything in the box. They want to hit. And one thing that was expressed to me and explained to me recently, which I think is invaluable when you're evaluating talent, is do guys want to hit or do they not want to hit? And it was actually described as, are they deciding to swing? Or are they deciding not to swing?
Right.
So that's the kind of level of hitter that John Dowd was, but that, we're also looking for in real life too.
99 power, 99 contact for right-handed pitching. Like, stud.
Not fair.
Not fair.
Hall of Fame as John Dowd. Is that what we got to do?
Yeah, like we'll petition it. He is I again, you gave the example of Michael Vick. I would say John Dowd, greatest video game athlete of all time.
I'm still going Mike Vick. I'm still going Mike Vick.
Pablo Sanchez, anyone?
Yeah, I mean, it was unfair, man. It was so unfair. It was ridiculous, but EA Sports, shout out, you guys have been doing it right forever. Would love to see NCAA football come back though in some capacity, because that was, I mean, if we did a list on favorite sports game, NCAA football, probably in my top 2. It's just such an incredible game, better than any Madden. But then when they did it, where like you graduate from college and then you could go be in Madden, it was like EA Sports knew exactly what they were doing.
Did you ever do online dynasties with NCAA?
I was never an online guy until I was like an adult, because I can never convince my mom to get a good enough internet to make it work. I was, to be honest, it's not that like times were tough, but like being from a family that's from like Trinidad, a lot of like my early schooling, until I couldn't make it work, we would get the trial AOL discs that gave you like a month trial, and we would just we would get like 30 of those and recycle it for like a good 4 or 5 months, where every couple every 30 days or every 15 days we'd just be using a new AOL startup disk, create an AOL account. It'd be like Julian Ortiz 24, because I've used up 1 to 23 previously to that. So I'd always have dial-up internet. I couldn't afford to play video games.
If someone calls you, you're bumped off.
That's it.
I gotta, like, my buddies and I lived on online dynasty growing up, and just some of the memories that we have, staying up till 3 a.m. all logging on, putting the headsets on, school night, and just, oh man, we're bringing back some solid memes right now, and it's, I really would love for EA to do that series.
Well, so like one of my, just on the topic of like buds, so I used to just get together with my buddy. Shout out Sean Usher. He went to North Toronto. Sean Usher, the baseball crusher, like 6'5" plus, big boy, just crushing bombs. Literally like the white right-handed Barry Bonds of like high school baseball. Like just dingers, and best friend to this day. But we used to just get together, and we'd crush like Gears of War, where I'd turn all the lights off in the house and just play Carry Jules. It's like a Mad World in the background on repeat until we beat the game. Like 3 hours of it, just because they played it in the Gears of War 2 commercial. Like lights out, just going on the computer in the background, just going ham. And then what we ended up doing is, throughout high school, we would play all of these EA Sports games, because I was always an EA Sports guy. I was never a 2K guy. I was never a show guy until I had to go and get the show, because it was the best baseball game available. And we got this WWE belt, and we would say that whoever wins whatever game would be the champion, and they would hold the title until someone challenged them, but the champion always got to choose the game. So if I was lucky enough to sneak beating him in baseball, which eventually came the show, which we were like pretty even, he was better because that was like his game. I was Madden. If I won the title, you're gonna beat me in Madden, and it ain't ever gonna happen. I think once I got Madden, it was just like I had to pick other games because he would just refuse to want to play video games with me anymore. Is there a video game that either of you two are just so dominant that your friends would just choose never to play with you against?
I used to be halfway. I'm not anymore. No, anybody could beat me in anything. But I used to be halfway decent at FIFA. And there's
Okay.
one guy that him and I would always have good battles against, and he was also really good at Madden too. And basically, we grew up. This was our like daily routine. We'd wake up. He'd probably come over around like 11 a.m. We'd play video games till around 6, and then we go to a baseball game, the AAA Richmond Braves game that night, and rinse, repeat all summer long. So that it was FIFA for a little bit. There wasn't anything that was like, yeah, you can't touch me.
Right.
But that would probably be for a few years I had a solid run at.
What about you, Julio?
I was trash.
Julio was like, I'll play you in real wall ball, real like,
I'll play real sports.
like I will race you from first to third and have a faster time than you ever would.
Yeah,
That
2K was not like basketball was not good at in video games. Baseball games, if I played my cousins because I played more than them, probably.
Right.
But
just experience alone. Yeah, no, listen, fair.
don't throw it in the strike zone; they're gonna swing.
I will say now, just to that, I got to plug this in. There was a time where I beat a friend of mine in 2K. I think it was 2K07 or 2K8 or whatever it was. I beat him with the Oklahoma City Thunder, and I scored 72 points with Kevin Durant, and I won 72-69.
Wow.
So that was my one time where I was like, all right, I will do this, and I will make you sorry that you even picked up the control.
Now, did you ever come up with strange rules? And this will be the last question I ask you on video games. But did you ever come up with like a rule that like you had to abide by when playing, just to like up the stakes at all? Because I have one, but I'll come back to it. I just want to know if either of you guys have one.
I got none.
Yeah, I'm sure there was, and unfortunately, I'm forgetting. Like sometimes we outlawed Mike Vick.
Sure. Okay.
They had that one year. They had the QB cone. We would always turn the QB cone off.
Okay.
Oh, remember that? Yeah.
Yeah. That was like the QB like vision. It was like that was terrible. I hated that. But you had to be good on the sticks. So for me and my best buddy Sean, we would do we would do random teams when we played the show. So you didn't get to chew it. You got to do randomized 3 times and pick one of the 3 teams. Only way to do it. And so if one of us as a home team was the National League, our rule was that if a pitcher hit a home run, the game was over. And for the pitchers at bat, you had to throw fastball center of the strike zone. And so the batter had every opportunity to like pick the uppercut swing, high zone, lock in on the pitch, know exactly what's coming, and then power swing. And so we would strategically then get to a point where if we were like, if I got like the Giants, I was like, I'm winning because I'm going to get Mad Bum to go up there. I'm starting him and he's just juicing balls. And I don't think we've had like a warning shot. We'd never had a game ended on pitcher hitting a home run to win the game. But for me, it's all about those fun, quirky things that you can do when you're playing video games.
Now that you mentioned that, there was one. We called it the Wall of Fame, and it must have been NBA 2K series. But we had a portion of the wall in my mom's house was designated off for what we called the Wall of Fame. And how you got on the Wall of Fame was if within the last, I believe it was like 3 minutes of the game time, if your center, and it had to have been like a traditional center, it couldn't have been Steph Curry out there.
Like Zadrunas Ilgauskas.
Yeah, he might have been on it. I've got pictures on my Facebook, and I'll get them and I'll send them to you. Of like we printed off like little pictures and taped them up on the wall. If your center hit a 3 within that time and you were down, then you win. You get the win in that game. And we would put the picture of the center and it was like, oh, for example, one of my buddies' name was Colin. It was like Colin versus Tyler, March 3rd, 2008. Final score was this, but Andrew Bynum hit a 40-foot 3-pointer.
Wow.
Yeah, that was the one. That was one of the rules we had for sure.
Jeez, listen, that's top notch, man. I love being able to do that fun stuff. Listen, Julio, you're gonna have to figure out getting good at a game, because I'm gonna tell when your daughter's older, and she wants to start dating a guy, you're gonna have to say, listen, with these kids growing up, they're gonna play. They play video games all the time. You're gonna have to figure out one game that you can beat this prospective boyfriend in, and say, listen, if you beat me, you can take my daughter out. But if I beat you, I never want to see your face again. So pick a game now. Start playing from experience. That way in like 16, 17 years, you're ready to go to beat that boyfriend.
I got to get a PS5 now. Then.
Hey, this is permission. And you convince the lady, honey, listen, some young buck is going to come and ask our daughter to go on a date. And the only language we're going to be able to speak together is video game. I got to beat him. And that's it.
I'm always looking out for her. That's it. Man,
listen, gentlemen, this has been a lot of fun. We've been talking for an hour 20 yet again. I mean, every time we talk, it's like something new is going on. I appreciate you guys jumping on and having some conversations, and I'm interested to see if people agree with our baseball game choices. I'm gonna have to throw it up there and see what response we kind of get. But all the best when it comes to the 2021-2022 season with the signings. I hope everything goes well. I hope the Blue Jays can rally. Who knows? Maybe we're playing in Buffalo again next year, based on the way things are going sort of in Canada. But all the best to you guys. Hope you guys stay safe. Good luck. Go Jays, go.
Right. As you wear a Dodgers hat.
Fight on, Trojans.
I don't know about that. Go Ducks for sure. And I want to say it's always fun getting on this podcast and getting together. And it's like I'm having a good time. I'm laughing here. Cheeks are all rosy. But with that said, just to kind of not to make it too real for a second, but with COVID going on too, there are and the people unable to get together, and that unfortunately exacerbates some mental health issues in the community. And the American Medical Association did recently announce that they're expecting more people to have substance related overdoses this year or mental health issues than in years past as such. And I believe it was the National Institutes of Health also came out stating that COVID-19 does affect those who are undergoing substance use disorders, are more susceptible, to the tougher symptoms of COVID than those that are more healthy. So if you can, please donate to substance abuse or substance use organizations. The Substance Abuse Mental Health Services Association lists tons of resources out there, and you can even find local charities to donate to as well. So as much fun as we're having digital, I know a lot of people are out there are struggling with being the digitalized aspect of it too. So make sure you're checking in on your loved ones too.
Yeah, great. Listen, that's a great way to end the pod. I'll throw a link up. We'll look at some organizations and some helpful sites, Ty, you and me, and then we'll throw it up on the post. And that way, if people do need help, and that's always the thing that we say, if you need help, seek it out. There are helpful organizations out there. And if you know someone who's struggling, like Tyler said, let's make sure that we connect with everyone. We're all, for the most part, lucky if we do have families that are close that we can spend it with, whether it's our kids, children, parents, girlfriends, whomever it is. But not everybody has that. So let's be good humans. That's 2020. Let's be good humans. That's the mantra. Gentlemen, it's been a pleasure.
It is, man. This is awesome.
We'll do this again. We'll do this again. We'll just do a tire pod on video games next time. Julio's gonna have to step it up once he gets his PS5.
Start practicing.
That's it. Listen, for my guests, Julio Ramirez, Tyler Baldwin, I'm your host, Julian Ortiz. Thank you, everyone, for watching and listening.